Okay, we are live, but we must let it breathe, baby. Just for a moment, let not your heart be troubled. Won't last long. Just ask Mrs. Jensen. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Hold on, getting them all together here. All right, and we're good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, it's been a wild and zany news day at Broncos HQ, not at Broncos HQ, but around Broncos HQ. We'll get to all the Sean and George Payton stuff here in a minute. But first things first, a bona fide transaction today. Your gut reaction to the Broncos signing former Colts starting quarterback Sam Ehlinger.
I just want to echo what Sean Payton said. He's so appreciative not to be in the quarterback market this year. God bless Bo Nix, etc. Yeah, I mean, this is basically the Zach Wilson replacement, Chad, the QB3 camp arm, training camp fodder, whatever you want to call him. He had 3 starts for Indianapolis in 2022. He was a 2021 sixth round pick, a later round pick, and he's been a backup ever since, more or less, in Indianapolis. So he's going to compete with Stidham for the number 2 role, but I would be surprised, Chad, if he overtook him for that role.
Yeah, I got to tell you, he never really impressed me, or I should say, he has yet to really impress me as a pro. He's got 3 career starts, all in Indy. He's 0-3. Let's see, 63% completion in those 3 starts. He also apparently appeared in a 4th game that same year. So keep that in mind with what I'm about to say. 573 passing yards, 3 tutties, 3 picks, and a little bit of rushing production. But in those, we'll call it 4 games. I'm not sure how much he played in that 4th. 3 starts and a game. Zach, he was sacked 14 times, which is at a pretty high clip. So, hey, he's a experienced quarterback, though. That's the good thing. He's been around the NFL. Does he have the Titanic possible, albeit slim odds chance ceiling like a Zach Wilson? No. But he brings a little bit of stability, and they can just kind of check that off their list of to-do items, Zach, for the offseason. Camp arm, possible practice squad QB, secured, check.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up his rushing upside too, because in my article, I went back and I looked at his production at Texas, where he was a little more decorated, Chad. He had the most rushing touchdowns for a quarterback in school history in single season. I think it was 18, something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does stick around for the duration, if he's using like a Taysom Hill type role under Sean Payton. That could be an option. But yeah, I don't see him beating out Stidham for the number 2 job.
Yeah, they love Stiddy. That's something Sean Payton. Yeah, is he the new Joker? But that's something, Ellinger, that is. That's something that Sean Payton talked about today, how pleased the Broncos were, how pleased he is to get Stidham back in the saddle, and that it was perhaps unrealistic to expect to get both Stidham and Wilson back in the fold. What's up, Sam Bam? How are you doing, brother? Sam in the house with an early super chat. Great to see you, my friend. Much love and respect. Says, evening, guys. Go Broncos. We really appreciate you, Sam. BK also checking in with a super chat. Great to see you, BK. Thank you, bud. Saying, smoke. I think we need to either take a running back in round 1 or trade up in round 2. Lots of teams need a running back in the early 2nd round. Well, George Payton today said we will draft a running back. So for what it's worth, they are not only planning to draft a running back, Zach, but their Broncos are very confident that they're going to get a guy who can help the room. He also kind of joked, and you're talking about trading up in round 2, but he also kind of joked about trading back out of round 1. But what are your thoughts here for BK?
Well, I think he's referencing a possible smokescreen with what George Payton said. He said we're going to draft a running back, but he also said there's good ones from rounds 2 through 6. He purposely left out round 1. So I don't know. He's either telling the truth where, I don't know if it's being lying season, if we can believe him, or like BK is saying here, might be a smokescreen. But regardless, I'm on your side here. I think you need to invest early in a blue chipper and not wait until the 3rd or 4th round to address what is, Chad, the most glaring weakness left on the Broncos roster.
Exactly. It is, no doubt about it. Running back. Taylor, what's up, bro? Thank you for the super chat. He says, we signed Bo's towel boy, fellas. LOL. Am I wrong? No, you're not wrong. It's just a fail safe to the fail safe. And without sounding too mean-spirited about Ellinger, Zach, he's a glorified camp arm with a little bit more upside. And the cool thing about it is the glory relative to camp arm status is true in that he has genuine NFL starting experience, not a ton. Like, Zach Wilson last year, Zach showed up and he hadn't even played a down, didn't even get to start, but he was the most NFL experienced quarterback in the room relative to the number of starts. This dude's got 3. So Jarrett Stidham's got him by a couple, one, two, I don't know, 2 or 3. 1, Scott's telling me 1. He's got 4. Stidham's got 4 career starts. Ellinger, whatever, has 3, Zach. So yeah, he's a glorified towel boy. Maybe not quite that, but yeah, Taylor, the sentiment holds true.
I mean, he's going to be your, at best case scenario, your quarterback 3. And if you get to your quarterback 3, the season's probably over anyway, Chad. So, yeah, I mean, you can call him what you want, camp arm, fodder, towel boy. He's going to be here probably for the short term.
The Papa Bear, David McElrath, checking in. What's up, brother? Great to see you. Thank you so much for the super chat support, my friend. He says, good evening, Broncos country. Chad, Zach, Deacon Scott, hashtag God bless the USA. Let's go, Bo. MHH for life. Buckham ×3. Denver Broncos for life. Very excited about the draft. I am too. And not only because, Zach, the Broncos hold a mostly full complement of draft picks. I mean, they have the same number of picks that they would have in a rounds 1 through 7 if they had 1 pick in each round. The difference is they don't have a 5, they don't have a 7, but they have 3 6-rounders. But what actually makes me the most excited is with those arrows in the quiver, so to speak, George Payton, his history as a draft artist, whatever it's been, 21, 22, 23, 24. So he's got 4 classes under his belt, Zach. Pretty formidable. He comes out of the draft pretty good.
Every mock scenario I've seen, whether it's defensive lineman or edge or running back or receiver or tight end, I have to say, Chad, I'd be pleasantly surprised with whatever scenario the Broncos end up going with. It could take them in many different directions. They intimated today it's still the ultimate crapshoot, which it is, Chad, and we don't know until we know. But I'm excited, David, along with you, and I think the Broncos, when it's all said and done, are going to come out of day one with a very good player.
Great to see you, Papa Bear. Eric Flynn, shout out for the stars, big dog. Great to see you. The Ronk checking in too. Good evening, Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you, buddy. Let's get to some of the news here that we haven't touched on. We were just kind of bantering about it, Zach, right before we went live. But according to team president Damani Leach, the Broncos throwback uniforms, which everybody obviously loved last year, they looked sweet, dude. I mean, my favorite new uniform, even though that's not technically a new uniform, was that one and the midnight blue white helmet combo that they had on against the Browns. Those to me, man, those should be the 2 primaries. But instead of being only able to roll the throwbacks out twice, Leach revealed that they will be able to do that up to 4 games this year. How excited are you for that?
Very. I still think the throwback should be the permanent uniform, but that's maybe another conversation for another day. But yeah, it's just more of a chance for the Broncos to showcase what I believe are the best threads in the entire NFL. They are simply magnificent, Chad.
They are. The only thing, I've said this before, but the only, I don't know, it's like a devil on my shoulder, paranoia, superstitious thing about the throwbacks going toward them as the full-time uni is the bad juju. As storied as the Broncos were in the AFC, we'll say, up until the point they changed to the new Bronco, that we know since 1997, was 0-4 in the Super Bowl. A lot of great stuff, a lot of great achievements, but never quite reached the pinnacle. The very year they switched to the new, I don't know, we'll just call it the horse head mane, whatever, the Bronco, without the D, of course. They win the freaking Super Bowl. All 3 of their world championships now. So they went to 4 with the new look, won 3 of them, have come with that. But maybe, Zach, it's been enough time that the juju is starting to reverse itself. And in order to kind of help create some of that mystical momentum, maybe you want to go back to the old throwback and see what shakes out.
I mean, look what happened when they wore the last game of the regular season. I know they weren't playing starters, but they curb stomped their rivals, Kansas City, to earn a playoff berth at home. So I think the lore starts with that. They're going to make their own memories in these uniforms.
Yeah, what was it? The 2 times it was Chiefs and Raiders, right?
I believe.
Raiders at home, I'm pretty sure, and Chiefs at home. So very interesting. That's some of the news worth talking about here. And then also a few other things. Zach, you touched on this with an article reporting for us at MHH, but I'll just read your headline. Broncos GM George Payton sets a timeline for player extensions. Break that down.
Yeah, not much breaking news here. We covered this a few days ago on the website, Chad. Chris Thomason reported it that George Payton was not going to do any extensions until after the NFL draft. And basically what he said today, he told reporters, you know how we've done business in the past with deals Garrett Bowles and Cooper and Miners, Pat Surtain. And he says, I'm open to it. I'm open to having those discussions with the eligible players like Benito, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, Cortland Sutton, but it's not going to happen until after the NFL draft.
By the way, Boogmeister, it's all good, bro. Oh, caught you live, big dogs. Was trying to throw in a super to show love, but it won't let me. Apparently, you have to pay a credit card bill or something like that. Ha ha. Love you guys, MHH. Dude, all good. We're just stoked to see you in the chat. We appreciate your intention, by the way. But yeah, the window will come for the Broncos getting those deals done. It's basically a post-draft, post-initial OTA and rookie minicamp endeavor. Glenn Ashley, what's up, bro? He says the draft isn't won on day 1. Days 2 and 3 are the magic. Hashtag trust in Payton and Payton. MHH for life, Broncos for life, state of being. That's right, dude. Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is, in fact, a state of being. Sure. It's wherever you are. And Glenn is it Melbourne? No. I just said it the other night. That gummit. I know it's in Australia, but either way, Glenn, thank you, pal. And, my only counterpoint to your assertion there, Glenn, is that if you look at the 2 most pivotal players on the roster, both drafted by George Payton, Pat Surtain and Bo Nix, happen to be first-round picks. So I agree with you that that's where the depth and some of the true difference makers can come is day 2 and 3, no doubt about it. But I guess if anything, Zach, it illustrates how important getting that first-round pick really is. But it's a little bit tougher, though. The arithmetic, when you get outside the top 10, it starts to kind of minimize. And then you get into, outside the top, you're barely within the top 20. It gets a little bit more complex, ensuring you get one of those foundational guys.
No, you're right. That's why they're premium players and, premium picks for a reason. But I just feel like if not to overdraft or take one for the sake of taking one, but your most glaring weakness is running back. It's a historically deep running back class. If you're sitting there feeling pretty good about a blue chip first round caliber running back, then I would pull the trigger, Chad, and not wait, because that's how you end up with the situation you had last year with Audric Estime, a 5th round pick, taking most of the carries. We don't want to see that repeat in 2025.
True. Glenn, does it trigger you when Americans say Melbourne? I'm just curious. When they enunciate the R there, I'm just curious. Genuinely curious. Ronk, Nick and Eric had the Broncos taking Michigan defensive lineman Kenneth Grant on the Broncos for Breakfast mock draft. Yeah. Heard that, and I wouldn't hate it. I honestly wouldn't hate it. As you heard from George Payton today, it's a deep draft. Running backs to be had rounds 2 through 6, maybe even later. So don't tie yourself to necessarily reaching. I mean, if Trey Henderson if you think you can get within striking distance, Zach, of a Trey Henderson, a Judkins, a Dylan Sampson, either at 51 or trading a couple spots to get one of those guys, then use that first round pick on another premium position. And defensive line, especially Zach, coming out of that Super Bowl, it's taken on a new shine, so to speak.
And they mentioned it, both Sean Payton and George Payton today, not directly, sometimes directly, but more, indirectly, about how important it is to have depth up front in the trenches. It's not to be discounted that the Broncos could go defensive line or edge rusher or whatever, inside linebacker at 20 overall. There's a reason why they keep bringing it up, and the breadcrumbs could lead us to that very pick, Chad, in late April.
Okay, what else did we learn today? I mean, honestly, if you go through and listen to Sean Payton's remarks in particular, I would say it's the case for Payton almost the same, but almost every answer Payton gave is a story, is an article, it's a newsworthy comment. And so we'll be breaking that down in depth with the articles, and we'll try and touch on as many of them as we can. But one of them, Zach, that I wrote about today is Sean Payton's remarks on Evan Ingram, which I found to be interesting. The most curious of which, he got really specific on how Evan Ingram can help Bo Nix take the next step. And here's what he said, quote, "We've talked about it for 2 years now. The interior triangle of your passing game is the tight end, the running back, and the third receiver. When you're seeing a lot of these coverage shell looks, those positions have to thrive. The very logistical answer is that Ingram is closer physically to Bo than the receivers sometimes. The matchups inside, it's hard to play that position if you're not able to attack the interior triangle of some of the looks we're getting defensively. This helps Bo," close quote. So he got, Zach, surprisingly into some of the deets here on how exactly Ingram opens things up, hopefully, for Bo.
I think this was a very complicated way of saying that Ingram is an ideal joker in his offense, and he works the middle of the field down the seam and traditionally does the damage that a good tight end should. And it's going to help out Bo Nix because, like with the lack of a running game last season, who did he have at tight end to really lean on, Chad, as a safety blanket? No one. Troutman, Kroll, Nate Atkins, those weren't serious players. Evan Ingram is a very serious player.
Before we grab that super chat, Scott, I want to echo the Ronk here and wish a happy birthday. I don't know if he's in the room, but to our friend Albert Knoppers, longtime super supporter in our community. And the Mile High Dutchie is one of his affectations. So happy birthday to Albert, and hope it's a great day, big dog, and give our best to the missus. And with that, let's grab David Youngkin, who says via super chat, thank you, David. He says, "The one best thing about Payton and Payton, you can't believe anything they say when it comes to the draft."
True.
Yeah, that's one of the it's both exciting, intriguing, and also a little bit deflating aspects of, okay, you've come out of free agency, even at the combine, you can usually pretty much unless you ask them, hey, what are your intentions in round one, right? They're going to obfuscate, but most of what they're discussing at the podiums at the combine is pretty cut and dry. But it's always the owners' meetings, Zach. It's always the annual NFL meetings in Florida and Palm Beach where they start getting a little smoke screeny, and you're not sure exactly which aspects of what they're saying, if anything, are true relative to the draft. But it does make it fun for guys like us and fans, really plugged in, passionate fans too, Zach, put our thinking caps on and try and crack the code and interpret what's really being said. And it's like Scott likes to say, follow what they do, not what they say. That's absolutely true in any given situation, Zach, in the NFL, but it's even more true leading up to the draft. The problem is we can't test the theory till the draft. So we're not just going to sit on our hands until then, which makes it the fun part.
They call it lying season for a reason, Chad. And a lot of teams, and the Broncos did it last year at this time with Bo Nix. They threw everyone off the trail by feigning their interest in J.J. McCarthy. They acted like they didn't want Bo Nix, and in reality, they wanted him all along. So that's why they say when George Paton said rounds 2 through 6, maybe he's talking about round 1. Maybe the Broncos really are looking in that direction. It's like hey, look over there. Keep you distracted.
And by the way, and thank you again, David. By the way, for guys like me who have been pretty consistently pounding the table, hey, go out and swoop up J.K. Dobbins while he's still available, or a Nick Chubb or someone like that. Sean Payton pretty much poo-pooed that today. He said, quote, on why they didn't sign a running back in free agency, was it due to the depth of the position in the upcoming draft? Quote, "I think that factors into it. I also think we felt like it was a pretty lean year in regards to free agency at that position, just relatively speaking. There is depth in the draft," close quote. So they don't seem to be buying anything that the free agent backs at this stage, Zach, have been selling.
I mean, when Najee Harris was the crown of the free agent class, then it is, as he said, thin. And J.K. Dobbins, if that's who we're all wanting, or a broken down Nick Chubb, it shows you the state of the veteran running back market. So just draft 2, draft 3, whatever you have to do, reload in the draft.
Okay, other interesting pieces of news here. George Payton on the subject of this is, I got to find this. This is a long article from Nick, so I got to find the applicable quotes here. But just getting back to some of the conversation with George Payton today on the subject of running backs, a few notes here, Zach. Quote, "It's a strong class. There are different flavors throughout the draft. I think you can get a good back in the second round all the way up to the 6th round. That's how it is." Then he went on to also say that, hey, man, everyone's talking about the running backs. In other words, Broncos hear you. Broncos know what the primary focus is in the fan sphere and the blogosphere. There's just so many of them, he said. The first and second down power back, you have the change of pace, you have the third down, and you have the 3 down. There are not as many 3 down backs, but it's a good class. We'll get a running back in this draft. So closing that particular quote, Zach, as Lady D jumps in off the top rope. Running back, guys, it's not the subject is not escaping them. Sometimes you wonder, like, are we the only ones seeing this? Why isn't something being done? No. Running back's on the brain, most definitely, Zach, at Broncos HQ.
I'm pretty sure George Payton watches the podcast, Chad, because we talked about last night likening the class to flavors of ice cream, literally. And he's right. There's different kinds and different sizes, different shapes, and different running back depending on what you want to do for every team in the NFL. But he mentioned 3 down running back there, and he mentioned the scarcity of them. That's who I want the Broncos to go after. And thank you preemptively, Lady D.
Lady D, so generous, so awesome, helping us out here tonight with a very generous super chat. Love you, Deanna. She says, "I'm trusting we get a running back in the draft. I think the Broncos know what they're doing and what they're going for. As for a stadium to hold a Super Bowl, I'm for a retractable roof. The best of both worlds. Hashtag MHH for life. Hashtag bridge of the gap." Oh, thank you. Zach, break down what she's talking about the stadium. Some fans might have missed that because it hasn't been as big a part of the conversation or the headlines today, but the new stadium thing that the Broncos are kind of in process of green lighting, they want to be able to also qualify as one of the destinations potentially for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, this was easy to see coming with the relationship with the Kroenke family out there in Los Angeles. This is what they want to do. They want to turn Denver or Lone Tree or wherever, Aurora, the cities that are being mentioned as possible landing spots, as a megaplex, not just for sports, but entertainment events and everything like that. But they definitely want a Super Bowl in Denver. They want the economic benefit of that, bringing that to town. And Damani Leach mentioned it could be an open air stadium or it could be a retractable roof. And I saw on X anyway, Chad, the roof idea was met with a lot of pushback from Broncos country.
I don't know why, though, to be honest with you, because for they still have to opponents still have to deal with the altitude. That's not going to change whether they're domed or not, or retractable roofed or not. And as far as the elements, playing in the elements and all that stuff, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the Broncos aren't the only team in the wintertime and late fall, a cold city. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, what is it about the outdoor stadium component that segment of Broncos country is clinging to? I'm genuinely curious. Like, you feel in some way it's an advantage to have an outside stadium? Because just to play devil's advocate, I'm not necessarily asserting this, Zach, but it can be just as advantageous to play in a dome. Like, think about Peyton Manning, dude. Whenever the Broncos, I mean, he always played well at home, don't get me wrong, but you put him in any away dome and he was going to have a nice day because of all that time he spent not only in Indianapolis, but because how it suited his game. And then also, I mean, look at all the hay that Sean Payton made in the Superdome down in New Orleans.
I got to be honest. There's really only one player on a team that I care about can play in cold weather, and that's the quarterback. And Bo Nix showed that he can play in the nastier environment. So they would practice out there in the cold. They would practice out there in the snow if they had a retractable roof. I really don't care either way. As long as they produce a winning product, whatever stadium they want to play in is fine by me.
Thank you again, Lady D. We really appreciate you so much. Christopher Ringen checking in with some star support on Facebook. That's a newer name that I recognize anyway. So welcome, Christopher. Appreciate the stars. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in the chat, and we will keep an eye out for that most definitely. So here's Chase. No dome, please. You can talk me into a retractable roof, though. Okay. So let me just ask you, no dome, but under what conditions then would you accept them putting the roof on? And if that's the case, why not just go dome, period? I'm genuinely asking. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. Although I got to tell you, like, history and like tradition does play a part in this, and that kind of stuff does appeal to me. Like, there's nothing like sitting down in the stadium at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, whether you're on the whether you're on the east side and you can see the sun hitting the west people and you're in the shade a little bit and you're going, man, I'm glad I'm not on that side of the stadium. Or you're on the west side and the sun's bearing down on you and you go, man, I wish I was on the other side of the stadium and out of the sun, so to speak, the south stand. I get the open air aspect is part, Zach, of the tradition. So I do at least understand that part. But as far as like Chase Wellner, he's given us at least his preferences. Why though? I'm curious still why, Chase.
I think how the Cardinals do it, they were one of the first where they literally slide the field out and back in, stuff like that. They can do retractable roofs, opening it and closing it. It allows for more venues at that location. Like I said, that's what the Penners and the Walton ownership group is in for, as well as making money, getting a return on their investment, and building up the infrastructure around the football team is the easiest way to do that. So retractable roof, no problem with me.
He's like, hey, football's meant to be played in the elements. Roof has the flexibility at least. Okay, gotcha. Here's another aspect, an economic one. Randy Peel says on Facebook, having open air stadium shows the snow, which can then bring skiers from out of state to the mountains, which is a fair point. Although I think Denver, it's pretty known if you want to go skiing, that's one of the primary places to fly into for people, and then, drive 50 minutes up to an hour, whatever it is, up to Breckenridge and all the other spots up that highway. But either way, that's another aspect, Zach, of the news cycle today. And also, this didn't come out of anything relative to the owners' meeting remarks, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. The Broncos are holding a top 30 visit with a mini Cooper Kupp clone. This is a kid by the name of Efton Chisholm, Eastern Washington wide receiver. He's about 4 inches shorter than Kupp, about 10 pounds lighter, but very similar, Zach, in their play style and production. And of course, they share an alma mater.
It's almost eerie how similar they are. And I can see where the Broncos are going with this, because they pursued the real deal, reportedly, Chad. They made at least a light pursuit of Cooper Kupp before he signed elsewhere. And now the Broncos are trying to go for a younger clone version of him. So I'd be on board. They need that possession guy, the sure-handed guy over the middle.
On X, Bronco Danny saying Bo played really bad in New York in the rain. Yeah, everyone played bad in that game. Right. Bronco Danny, even Aaron Rodgers, which, look, yeah, Aaron Rodgers, I knew it when he chose to go to New York. It wasn't going to end well. It's just not a place, unless your name is Vinny Testaverde, it's just not a place that typically bodes well for quarterbacks. Very short shelf life for Mark Sanchez and so forth. He needed like all the King's horses and all the King's men of Rex Ryan's defense to make hay, even at that. But Aaron Rodgers, diminished though he may be, Zach, from the vagaries of Father Time, struggled mightily in that game too. Not to the extent statistically, if you look at the box score, say that Bo Nix did. I mean, Bo didn't even get to 100 yards passing in that game, but it was also only his third career start. Keep that in mind too, Bronco Danny.
And who won? The Broncos won. Yeah. Bo Nix didn't do anything to lose the game. And BK made the same comment. Bo went to college in the Pacific Northwest. Rain is fine. That's the same point I made. Is like, that's all I really care about. Can my quarterback play in the elements? And Bo has proven to me anyway, if you watch the tape, that he definitely can.
And I agree, Mike Givens, no artificial turf, whatever you do. So, like, that's the downside to a dome, whereas retractable, you could still go with genuine turf, genuine grass, etc. And Scott also brings up in that Jets game, Payton didn't let Bo throw until the second half of the season, basically, right? It was all short area stuff and a lot of run game and this and that. So that played a part too in the perception of how Bo played in that game. Yeah, side to side, basically the passing game, the offense side to side like a windshield wiper. I like it, Scott. Okay, Zach. A couple other things I want to grab from what Sean Payton had to say today. Interesting comments about what Talanoa Hufanga brings to the team. Now, remember, this is our first opportunity. The Broncos have not brought any of their free agents to the podium. They haven't even offered a Zoom with any of these guys because that's just how Sean Payton is. The bare minimum that is required in terms of exposure to the media, that's what you'll get with Sean Payton. So maybe we'll get a chance to hear from these guys, but haven't gone. I mean, we will at some point. Of course, they'll get podium opportunities this summer and training camp, maybe some OTAs. But in terms of free agency introductions, like you're traditionally used to getting and that most NFL teams honor, you're not getting that. So this is our first time really to hear from the team or anyone from the team, Zach, about these signings. So what Payton said about Hufanga, quote, well, what he brings to the team. Well, he's a great communicator. He's super intelligent. His experience, and there is toughness about the way he plays. Sometimes you can be a second responder defensively, sometimes a first responder, and he appears first a lot on screen. There's a style to how he plays, and part of that style, because he's so physical and so quick to support, he's had a handful of injuries, but there's a toughness to his game. You guys will like him. There's something about him, and when you meet him and you visit with him, so that was a big get. We felt excited about that. And I'll say that up to this point, Zach, every time the Broncos have signed someone that Sean Payton says is a big get, it's come out in the wash that way. So that makes me more excited for the new safety.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I've read through a lot of presser transcripts in my time, Chad, over the years, and I have never, that I can recall, remember using or hearing a term first and second responder on. I love that. I love the way Payton put that, and it's so true. When you pop on the film, he's always flying around the ball. Dre Greenlaw, he sets the tone in the middle, and then Hufanga is like a Troy Polamalu 2.0. I mean, he even looks like him. So I love these signings, A+ across the board. And I'm glad that Sean finally gave us some insight into it, Chad.
So real quick, last night we were bummed. Like literally we had just signed off and then all of a sudden it pops up on StreamYard, a super chat from DJ Capo. And so I messaged I dropped the message in the chat. I don't know if he was able to see it. Hopefully he gets a chance to see this. I told him we would get it, his super chat tonight and make it up to him. So DJ, hopefully you hear this. I don't know if you're in the chat, but he says, "What's up, Broncos fam? Zach, how do you feel that Lil Jordan Humphrey is gone? Me and you would have never thought Sean would let him go. I hope we can get LSU's tight end Mason Taylor and Ohio State running back, whether it's Trevion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins. We know Ohio State is a Sean go-to, maybe is what he's saying. I don't know. What are your thoughts here, Zach?"
First of all, I'm very, very happy. I mean, he really didn't let him go. Lil Jordan was a free agent, so it's not like he released him. But still, I mean, I just don't want players with bad juju around. It's like Melvin Gordon going back a few years ago. Just have that bad juju about him. It seemed like most of the time when Lil Jordan was the target, bad things happened that were bad, Chad. Drop passes, fumbles, this or that. So they can easily replace his production as like the fourth or fifth receiver. They signed Trent Sherfield. They'll probably draft a guy. And I'm right there with you. I love Taylor and I love Trevion Henderson.
I'm glad to see DJ's in the chat. So yeah, dude, in case you missed it, we barely missed your super chat after signing off. We signed off and then it came through last night. So glad we were able to get that. But the one thing I'll say about Lil Jordan is one of the reasons he was a Payton guy was the effort and execution and production he gave the team as a blocker. So we'll see, there's other ways to replicate that, and they can continue to train up and coach up their receivers to be better on the perimeter. George Fox, what's up, brother? Great to see you. Appreciate the stars, my friend. I hope you're doing well, big dog. Okay, we're at the 35-minute mark coming up on anyway. So any burning topics, questions, get them in the chat. We'll call this like the 2-minute warning. Let me take that off the screen. Thank you again, DJ. Jersey still looking dope, brother. And let me see. Okay, back to some of the other things. So Hufanga, we're stoked on that. On I'm trying to find this spot where he talked about the injury issue. But let me while I'm trying to find it here, Zach, let me mention what Payton said about Dre Greenlaw and being aggressive, San Francisco being aggressive trying to keep him. So he reminded everybody that he was their player at the time, meaning he was their free agent. So for the Broncos, nothing could happen until Wednesday in terms of signing to the line that is dotted. But Sean said, quote, "I'm glad he chose us. The only discussions that are being had at that time are between George Payton and Greenlaw's agent. Like I said, I'm just glad when the decision is finalized, you wait on a few of these guys and you don't know all the specifics. Those guys are excited about being in Denver." So those former Niners, two of them, plus, DJ Jones coming back, Zach, Greenlaw and Hufanga are stoked to be in Denver.
Yeah, those Niners defenses over the years, even going back to when Robert Saleh was the DC, have been fantastic. And it's not just the production with the stats; it's the intangibles like the attitude, the personality, the dog that Greenlaw has in him, the tone setter that Sean and George Payton talk about. You really did not have that on defense last season, Chad. Maybe aside from Malcolm Roach or Franklin Myers. You need that mouthpiece, that Derek Wolfe, that Aqib Talib, TJ Ward, as you brought up a few days ago. You finally have that now in Dre Greenlaw.
He also said on the level of competition actually let me see. Maybe, well, here's what he said. He thinks that if Greenlaw doesn't suffer that Achilles injury in the Super Bowl, he never would have made it to free agency. He said, quote, "We thought he was going to be highly sought after as a free agent. I think the injuries maybe played a little part as to how he became a free agent. Otherwise, he doesn't ever hit the free agent market and someone's contract is redone. I should say nothing surprises you anymore, but we felt like there would be these guys." He kind of cuts himself off. These guys are young players. When you look at their pitch count and their age, and then you study the injuries themselves, yes, I wasn't really surprised that there would be other teams who got heavily involved in competing, of course, for their services. So one of the factors we learned there, thank you, George, brother. Great pod, guys. Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life. Hit the thumbs up. Thank you, buddy. One of the things we learned there is that, yeah, they researched the injuries. And like in that Denver Post article from Luca Evans, we learned that the Broncos did like an insanely crazy deep dive intensive medical evaluation on Greenlaw in particular. I'm sure they did the same on Hufanga, but I got to get that down right. Is it Hufanga or Fanga? I think it's Fanga, but I just said Fanga. Either way. But one of the factors, there's a long-winded way of saying, one of the factors that helped after they did their evaluations, health-wise, the medicals, they went pitch count. There's still lots of tread on these guys' tires. Like they're not, even though Greenlaw's got 6 years in the league, you look at the number of games he started and the wear and tear, it's pretty minimal. It's more like a guy entering year 3 or 4, to be honest. And I think the same could be said for Hufanga, but more like he's got the wear and tear of like a guy of 2 years maybe. So if you can keep him healthy, man, this could be kind of a cash cow, so to speak, for the Broncos. What's up, Albert? Happy birthday, bro.
Happy birthday, Albert. And, Chad, you have to be really confident in your medical team to not only sign Dre Greenlaw and give him the guaranteed money the Broncos did, but also hype him up like Sean Payton is and insert him in the middle of that defense for a position where you're constantly, changing direction and exploding in different ways off of your foot where your Achilles is. Right. It's not easy for even a 27, 28-year-old, but the Broncos fortunately have one of the best medical teams in the business.
Totally. Todd Ostendorf jumping in with a super. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate you, my friend. So consistent. Every single chat. We appreciate when you throw down a super, bud. Means a lot. He says, how mean would the Broncos D be with Kenneth Grant, the Michigan defensive tackle, and Dre Greenlaw? Yeah, it would. And that was another thing Sean Payton talked about today is, again, at what point in the offseason can you trust what these coaches and GMs are saying? Because in that sit down with Kay Adams pre-Super Bowl that we've talked about now a million times, he talked about then the need for the Broncos, the needs, wants, and musts, and the must being upgrade the middle of the defense. And at the time, Zach, we interpreted that as inside linebacker safety. But he also today included nose tackle, which was why it was so important for them to get DJ Jones back in the house. So they got all three addressed in the offseason. So now anything you can bring to that is gravy. Grant would definitely be that, and also a nice preemptive move in the event that one of or both you're not able to get John Franklin Myers and or Malcolm Roach re-signed after 2025.
The answer would be pretty mean, but Todd, I have a question for you. How mean would the offense be with Trey Henderson, Amarion Hampton, or a Buka, or a McMillan, or anyone like that? So it's something to think about for sure.
We also have here, hold on, let me check a message. Yeah. We also have Andrew Baker checking in, an old OG. What's up, dude? We've even had the, come again, Scott? Okay. Big boy stars throwing down. Wow, bro. Thank you. Thank you, dude. We've met Andrew in the flesh. He came to, I think it was the first MHH meet and greet. So we've missed you. Yeah. He says, hey, Chad, Zach, Scott, and my family, work and life has been busy, but always listening. I got to know your gut reaction to how well we do this year. Love y'all, MHH for life. Well, Andrew, again, thank you, bud. And it's great to see you. We've kept the campfire blazing for you, bud. So we're glad to see you come back. And I know you, as you mentioned, listening, but I mean, come back to the live chat, right? So thank you, pal. But Zach, give him some insight on how you feel about this year.
Well, first of all, Andrew, it's good to see you again. Appreciate the stars and the support. Hope you're doing well. The family's doing well. Right now, it's March 31st. They had I think the best free agent class of any team in the NFL. They're primed in a good position, number 20 overall for the draft. They're a few pieces away, I think, Andrew, from really competing for the division and beyond that for a Lombardi Trophy, which is crazy to say, crazy to think about. But when you have the franchise quarterback in place, when you have the head coach, GM, ownership in place, that's the foundational talent you need to succeed, Chad. And the Broncos finally have those things.
My only question mark now is that running back, because this offense finished inexplicably. Like, put yourself back to day after last year's draft. Who amongst any of us, including, of course, obviously the skeptics, but who would have guessed that a rookie-led Broncos offense would have finished as a top 10 scoring unit? Obviously, let alone win 10 games, let alone make the playoffs. But the Broncos did in year one with a rookie Bo Nix. Then they go out. You've got all that time together. So they've got the time on task as a unit. Then you bring in an Evan Ingram, force multiplier because of the interior triangle that Sean Payton was talking about. Now you need the running back. And we know they're going to get a running back. We just don't know what shape or size or flavor, so to speak, that the Broncos are going to end up bringing in. But I feel very optimistic, Andrew, about the 2025 Broncos. We talked last night about ESPN bet setting their early over-under for the Broncos at 9.5 wins. Both Zach and I were taking the over.
Yeah, right now I think 11-6 would be a pretty fair down the middle projection. I think you're around that same mark, Chad, 10 or 11 wins. So we'll see, Andrew, how the schedule shakes out when it's released a few weeks from now. But we're both feeling very confident about the Broncos prospects.
The Duchess checking in.
Thank
so
you,
good
Michaela.
to see you. Second half of the stream, she's throwing down saying, "What's up, guys? I'm itching so bad for the draft. I can taste it. Much love." I know. And it feels like, oh man, here we are. It's like last day of March. We still have almost like a whole month to go till the draft, but the time will fly. It'll fly. There'll be a lot of stuff to get us through between now and then in terms of news, visits, this pro day, that. So it'll be here before you know it. But yeah, can't wait. And thank you, Michaela. Love you.
Thank you so much, Michaela. I'm so excited too. I'm also very anxious in a good way to see who the Broncos end up picking, Chad. There was less of a mystery last year, I feel like, because we felt like they would go quarterback, but this year they can go anywhere, and it's going to be a good player.
And by the way, Albert Knoppers, we gave you a big shout earlier in the show. So when we're done streaming, just give that a rewind, homie. Happy birthday again. The Ronk, great show tonight. Chad and Zach on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you for that, brother. And we got a few messages for you. Don't leave because we're going to take one last look at the chat before we dip.
Another tremendous episode, as always, of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on X at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on X at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad M. Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out MHHmerch.com and get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Mile_High_Huddle. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
That it does. And by the way, Joe Anthony, happy belated birthday. Says, I just turned 54 yesterday, or should I say 45? Sounds better. I'm 45, so we're inverted on that, buddy. We're inverted, but happy belated. I'm just checking to see if there's any last-second interesting questions. I mean, there's a question from James Miller about Von Miller helping us tremendously, but pardoning the pun, I think that's a horse we have flogged to death up to this point. We've talked so much about it. The answer is, of course, he would, but at what cost? And is he interested in coming to Denver to be his, where he's a legend and being a role player? Not sure, but he did give us that kind of mischievous answer to the question talking to Kay Adams a few days ago. So we'll see. I think, Zach, just kind of going through this, we've hit on everything with the exception of DJ's 11th hour super chat. Glad we saw this one before we dipped this time. Thank you, bro. Says, share the video. Yes, share it, guys. Broncos for life. Do y'all think we are going to get Nix's brother? That's Tez Johnson, the diminutive Oregon wide receiver. Knowing that Sean Payton loves big, tall wide receivers. He loves those 6'4" dudes like Sutton. Sutton's like his ideal guy. I mean, Johnson could be dangerous with trick plays. By the way, I still feel we should put Riley Moss, the number 2 corner, at safety and get Hunter at cornerback. Okay, interesting. Let's start, Zach, with Tez Johnson. Few things just by way of housekeeping. Broncos met with them officially at the they met with him at the Senior Bowl, and then they had a formal visit with him at the Combine. Didn't run very well at the Combine, but the difference between his straight line speed and how he plays on the grass, I can tell you right now, those are two vastly different things. He is very fast, lightning quick, etc. And even though he didn't run a great 40, last thing, and I'm serving it back to you, Zach, at the Combine, he was clocked as the guy with the wide receiver with the highest mile per hour at any point chasing down a pass during the position drills.
Yeah, I have the same opinion I did at the Combine. If he's there in the middle rounds, the Broncos haven't addressed receiver yet, and he's on the board, sure, go for it. I like what he can bring to the table, but I'm not, sprinting to the podium to draft Tez Johnson, put it that way.
Interesting, though. I think he's definitely on the table. The Broncos have those 3 6th-round picks. And if they end up holding on to all 3 6th-round picks, it would not shock me if they used one of them on Tez Johnson as a flyer. Not only because, like you said, what he could perhaps bring to the table, but also as a bone to Bo Nix, make him feel like, they're kind of taking care of him, looking out for him, all that stuff, etc. But thank you, brother. Great to see you again. And guys, before we dip out of here, I got to give a Mile High salute and a special shout out to the great Super Chat superstars and supporters helping us keep the lights on, like Sam Bam, like BK, Taylor Christensen, the Papa Bear, Eric Flynn, the Ronk, David Youngkin, the Lady D, love you, Deanna, Christopher, first time supporter on Facebook, George Fox, Todd Ostendorf, Andrew Baker, an OG circling back to the campfire. We love it. The Duchess, Michaela Parker, DJ Capo. And I think that accounts for everybody. So much love and respect. Zach and I are off till Thursday night, but MHH has plenty of content covered for you between now and then. Tomorrow night, building the Broncos. Wednesday, Broncos for breakfast plus Mile High Insiders. Then we're back. But last super here from Todd Ostendorf again. Thanks, pal. He says, Grant and Tet McMillan at 20. Which one would you get and why? Ooh, that's tough. If you're saying those are your only two, which one and why? That's tough, man. That would be hard for me to make that decision. But honestly, just because you don't have Sutton fully locked, I'd take Tet because I think he might end up being viewed as a top 10 talent that dropped in the final analysis. We'll see. But what's your answer, Zach?
I'm taking Grant. It's difficult to get a player of his caliber later, whereas there's a fairly deeper receiver class. And I'm not the biggest fan of Tet. I think he's a Cortland Sutton clone, and I would want someone that can complement Sutton a little more.
Just real quick, sorry, I'm just pulling up to remind myself, or not to remind myself, but to see if it's changed where he stands on the consensus big board. He's still ranked as the number 1 receiver in the class, Tet McMillan. And his peak in the mocks has been the 5th overall pick. He's currently on the board as the 10th best overall player and the number 1 ranked receiver. And that's quickly followed by Matthew Golden, Namika Egbuka, Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, and Alec Ayamanor. So that one still I have a hard time with. But anytime I look at the big board, it just reminds me once again how much I would love the Broncos to land Jack Besh, the TCU receiver. So we'll see. But guys, thank you so much. We love you. See you on Thursday.
Yeah, Judson Clark adding Tet's comments the other day made him look bad. He mentioned, Chad, he doesn't like watching film on a one-on-one basis because he watches it with the other receivers in the room or something like that. Very off-putting comments if I'm an NFL coach, but
stupid. Why would you say that? Why would you say anything, even if it's out of context or you didn't think? Why would you say that, bro?
He let the intrusive thoughts win, I guess, but we'll see what happens to his draft stock. We are off until Thursday. Have a great start to your week. We'll see you then. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.